All right, you guys, it's almost the brand new year. And if you are longing to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord in 2026, but you don't want to do it alone, I want to invite you to join Faith That Speaks. It's my online women's Bible study community. This year, we're going to be reading through the Bible together again, and we're adding a brand new Bible study track where we're going to explore the 7 churches of Revelation, learn how to study scripture with confidence, and apply God's timeless truths to everyday life. Each week, you're going to join me and our amazing team of mentors live on Zoom for teaching, encouragement, and fellowship with other women who genuinely love the Lord. And this group is tight, I am telling you. When I'm traveling, our mentor team steps in so you never miss a week of discipleship or connection. Basic membership at Faith That Speaks is just under $20 a month, and beginning in 2026, we're going to be introducing exciting new tiers with even more benefits and access. So if you're ready to grow in the Lord, build friendships that are rooted in the truth, and develop a faith that actually speaks into the world around you, come join me. Visit faiththatspeaks.com to learn more about it and become part of this thriving community of women who study God's Word today. Hey, you guys, this is the Heidi St. John podcast. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Today's conversation is going to speak directly to anyone who's ever stood at a crossroad facing a decision that could change everything. We live in a culture that idolizes comfort and avoids risk, but Scripture calls us to something entirely different. You guys might know what I call it. I call it off the bench and onto the battlefield. Well, my guest today, Dave Pasti, knows something about this, and his new book, Worth the Risk, tells a story of his story that was shaped by 2 defining risks: the bold leap into the unpredictable world of becoming a baseball agent and the far deeper step of surrendering his life fully to God. Along the way, Dave walked through moments that shaped him forever, the profound final conversation that he had with his father before he passed away, and the way that God, even in the differences between he and his wife, formed their marriage with strength and unity and purpose. This interview is about real courage, not the Instagram kind, but the kind that costs you something and grows you into someone that God can truly use. So settle in, grab a cup of coffee, and stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Before I jump into it with my guest, I want to say thank you to the primary sponsor of the Heidi St. John podcast. We're being sponsored in part by my friends at the Functional Medical Institute, and you can find out more about them by going to homeschoolhealth.com. All right, I'm really excited to welcome for the first time to the Heidi St. John podcast, live and in person, Dave Pasti. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I've come a few miles across the country, but it was definitely worth it to be here with you.
Yeah, you came all the way from Washington, D.C., or the surrounding area.
Yeah, well, you called it the swamp. I couldn't believe it.
Swamp. He said, you couldn't believe I called Washington, D.C. the swamp.
Well, for different reasons,
the sky
maybe.
Blue? Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It is downhill. You have to go downhill to get there. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here. We were introduced by a mutual friend, Dave Brody. And he speaks really highly of you and was telling me your story. I'm really intrigued by it. There's a lot to unpack here, but I really want to start by just introducing my audience to you and sort of, where you came from, a little bit about your family, and leading into this conversation that you had with your dad before he passed away.
Yeah, so I grew up originally born in Illinois, actually, and my father worked for IBM, so we moved to Rockville, Maryland in 1968. So I was 8 years old, grew up there in Maryland, and became a lawyer. And, now I've been practicing for almost 37 years.
Okay, wow.
And of course, my previous life, I was a baseball agent. So along the way there, I was a criminal defense attorney. I was personal injury, general practice, had my own law practice, and I still do. Now in my sunset years, I'm doing estate planning and probate, and I work part-time for Christian Legal Aid of D.C.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's quite the resume. I mean, that's a lot of different things that you did, and a lot of that stuff's pretty high, high pressure, I would imagine.
Yeah, when I look back, I mean, there's definitely times like I used to do jury trials, and I've back in the day, and so I've kind of ebbed and flowed, I guess, in different areas. But I also ran for office back in 2018.
Shoot, what'd you run for?
I ran for House of Delegates.
All right, so
in my district,
state seat.
a state seat, and
Yeah.
I didn't win, but I felt again God's leading me to do that.
Yeah. I think something that I have learned and am still learning, and God shows himself to us so many times in these situations, is that God's really asking for our yes. Like when he throws something out at you and you think, oh man, that's impossible. I don't know. But you feel that inside of you, the sort of urge to pursue it. There's a blessing in giving God your yes.
Well, when you say that, I think in order to even hear God, you really have to be in His Word and be praying
Boy.
about it. Because
Yeah.
if otherwise, He's not going to just speak to you in some,
No, that so resonates with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
get in the word, you guys, get in the word. I mean, we need discernment. We need to hear from the Lord. We need to know what he says so that when we hear
Yeah.
fake news coming at us from social media or from the television or from our neighbor, we can discern it. All this stuff doesn't happen unless you can hear that still small voice. And he often speaks to us through his word.
Well, it just reminded me that there was a time where I was kind of afraid to, figuring God's going to send me to China or something to be a missionary. And so I was afraid to kind of ask God what he wants me to do. But now
you read
it's,
Hudson Taylor. You knew it could
exactly.
happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I felt like as I grow in my faith, I can come to God and I know that he's going to lead me using my gifts and skills and to something that is certainly out of my comfort zone, but it's also what he's going to bless me.
Man, he takes us out of our comfort zone. Your book opens up with, or at least centers around, this conversation that you had, this final conversation, this powerful conversation that you had with your dad. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a little backdrop with my father. He came to live with us. Now we're going back to 1995, 30 years ago. We purchased a house with the idea of having him come to live with us because his health was declining. He was going to be put on, he had a stent put in his arm. He was going to go on dialysis. He was diagnosed with amyloidosis. So he had these white blood cells that were accumulating and now in his kidney. So we knew his health was going down. But on this particular night, he had been living with us for about 5 months, declining around Christmas a little bit. But I came home one night. My wife was actually taking our 2 toddlers to her parents' house and for, I think, overnight. And so my dad was there at home. I remember coming home and we were going to go out to dinner. Usually on Friday nights we go out to dinner and there was something a little different about him. And again, at dinner, he started to talk in ways that I hadn't heard him talk before, and how he shared more from his soul, like telling me how he never really had anyone to talk to. And that resonated because my mother had MS, multiple sclerosis, and for years. And so she was not able to, communicate very well. So I could see where he was coming from there.
He felt alone.
Yeah, he was alone. And and again, with his generation too, not a lot of talking with other men kind of thing. That wasn't something that he did. So when he shared that, I was just, listening. It was a little bit odd for me to hear that at that moment while he was telling me that. And as we went on to dinner, in terms of his career, he definitely, and this wasn't the first I knew that he didn't like his job, and he stuck with it because of our, raising 4 kids.
Yeah.
And my mother was certainly not able to work. So anyway, we had dinner. He was, he actually ordered a Mai Tai too, now that I think of it. And he rarely orders
So
a
many
Mai
things that were
Tai.
different.
And it's just one of those things. And so I wasn't thinking that, he's on his deathbed, or he's, I didn't really I should have, looking back, perhaps I could have encouraged him a little bit, but I was just listening. And then we drove home in silence. And I said, when we get home, I'm going to just kind of, make sure I'm with him and that sort of thing. He gets out of the car, goes to the front door. I open the front door. He then falls back onto me, and I catch him, and he basically has a heart attack.
Right
there. Yeah,
Oh, my
congestive.
goodness.
So I
And
called
you didn't
911.
kind of see that. You didn't see that coming.
No, I mean, I knew that his health wasn't good, but I didn't at that moment. Yeah, I mean, I was in shock basically, and so he, I believe he knew that he was going to die soon because the things he said,
things he was telling you,
the things he was telling me, and so, and then a couple weeks later, or maybe a few days later, we found an obituary that he wrote back 2 weeks earlier that he wrote his own obituary. And so
Shoot. So he knew something was going
something
on.
was going on. And he didn't say to me, I'm not going to be around much longer. You know, I guess maybe he didn't want to scare me, you know, but looking back on it, it was really a gift that he shared those things with me because
and he said that he really had some regret, and you were surprised by that.
Well, to some degree, I knew a little bit about but it was the fact that at the end of his life, that's what he was thinking about.
That's
you know, I mean,
that's all the things that we always say we don't want at the end of our life. Like we don't want to look back and regret that we didn't train our children in righteousness, for example. That's the one I hear all the time, right?
Yeah,
The moms and dads who come to me and say, if I'd understood how quickly it was going to go by with my kids, I would have spent more time talking to them about the Lord and preparing them for the world that they were going to encounter when they left our home, right? It's that terrible sting of regret.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, we all have some regrets, but at the end of our life, I mean, I wasn't really expecting, knowing my dad too, who had a lot of, he was very well liked by people. Anyone who met him, he really was just a very friendly man, and he just served. He was a believer, and so that's what really surprised me. Even when he retired, after my mother had died when I was only 21, and so
you've lost your parents at a young age. How old were you?
Yes.
When your dad died, you were 35?
35.
That is young to have lost both your mom and your dad.
Yeah, so that definitely hit me hard. And my father, I did look up to him a lot. He was my encourager. I mean, he always was encouraging to me growing up, and the things I did, and whatever I wanted to do. I put it in the book too. When I was 14, hey Dad, I want to ride my bike, go to Ocean City, and he was just.
See you later.
Yeah, he made us drive. Actually, he did drive the whole route to make sure it was okay.
I was going to say, like, my kids would be like, I want to drive to Portland. I'd be like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
He had a lot of adventure early on in his life, and then I think the life eventually came out of him when my mother was ill, and he stayed in the marriage and stayed around, but so it was okay. So basically, a lot of trauma, by watching my father die, but then the idea that here he is telling me something. Am I going to have regrets, at the end of my life? Those kind of regrets. We're all going to have some regrets.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's got me, thinking about what, where God was leading. And also prior to his death, I was already, kind of asking God for direction. So there were some things going on.
You felt unsettled.
I would say unsettled would be a fair thing to say. And then it really, came to light a little bit more of, I better do something about it.
Yeah.
What
was the thing you wanted to do?
Well,
you said, I'm going to do something about it.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So I was praying about it. And and a couple of years went by actually before I did anything different, because my law practice, I had started my own law practice back in 1992. So it was just starting to
actually make money.
Yeah, starting to actually make money. We had a deal with my wife. I was like, after the third year, if I didn't make a certain amount, I have to go work for someone. And I had reached that. So that was at the end of 95, right when my father died. So I'm going in 96, 97 was a good year. I was advertising on a Christian radio station, a lot of cases coming in, and I was, but at the same time, just, that unsettled feeling of, and I started.
Is this really what I want to do for my whole life?
Yeah, exactly. The day, there was, there was a lot of good things. I felt like I was serving my clients, but I was journaling, I journal, even back then I was journaling every day, and really a lot of thoughts about representing, being a sports agent, and that, just looking at my skills, I was a good negotiator, and I love sports and played sports a lot, and so I felt that, that's kind of where I landed. I said,
what if I tried this?
Exactly. Why not try being a sports agent? And that, the enthusiasm, but I could tell the thoughts of it, just the thought of it was like exciting. Yeah. It was exciting me. And I was like, just testing that out. And so even when I had the thought, and even when I talked to my wife about it, and she was, I think she was on board. I still can't remember exactly what she said, but nothing happened right away because I didn't have time. I just didn't have time to pursue it.
Yeah.
So that took, so anyway, that was the beginning of it of, yes, I want to do this. I don't really have time to do it. And then I actually hired someone out of law school a year later. So that was not till 1998. And that's when it really started to create a lot of momentum, a lot of pressure, a lot of all at once.
I think it's interesting, because obviously the story is about, the risks and you spent quite a bit of time in the book talking about your marriage
Hmm.
and the differences between you and your wife. Why would you make in a book like this, why would you make that such a central part of what you spent time on? Because I think it's fascinating. You've been married for over 30 years now.
Yeah.
And so have I. And I think sometimes people can wrongly assume that if you've been married for as long as we've been married, then there must just have never been conflict, but that's just not true.
Well, I think with respect to the story, what the story was also about me and my wife.
Yeah.
It was just a part of the whole thing. And I mentioned that I journal a lot. And so there's a lot of journal entries about our discussions about how to move forward on this. And my wife at the time, we have two small kids, ages 4 and 2. We have we're living in a house that my father was there, and he was actually helping with the mortgage. And now I had some money from the inheritance, so I was starting to pursue it. And, my wife was supportive, but skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, when we talk about the differences, I put in I guess in the book, I talk about this DISC personality test, and that was helpful for us because it hit the nail on the head because DISC stands for dominant, which is a get it done person.
Come on.
I'm speaking to you on that one. Influential, get excited. Conscientious, get it right. That's the kind of the description. And steady, get along.
So DISC, D-I-S-C.
D-I-S-C.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, that's just your dominant one is one of them, but you have a little bit of everything. But she's a get it right person. I'm a get it done person. And a dominant person also likes to pursue risks.
Yes.
And likes challenges.
Yeah.
A get it right person is very...
Like her least favorite thing would be the risk, I would think.
Yeah, she's very cautious.
Yeah.
So, and that's, and we joked a little bit about Nate Bargatze and his comedy act. He says, you can't have two dreamers in the house or you're going to go broke.
Well, I told you.
Yes.
I said my husband and I are both dreamers, and as a result, we've been broke a lot. And you were like, oh, I heard that in a comedy bit. We got
It's
two
true.
dreamers. Yeah.
So we need somebody to say no. And so she was cautious. I mean, she was skeptical. And as I began this process, we could see, we knew we were different. That came out early on in our marriage, but it didn't show itself until, this is kind of a little bit bigger. This is now we're talking about me being out of the house a lot. If I'm going to pursue this, I'm, going to baseball games. I'm starting to look for prospects. I'm starting to go out of the house more.
Mm-hmm.
And she was used to me being home for dinner.
And she probably liked
night.
having you home for dinner.
Yeah, home for dinner every night. Yeah. So that eventually started to increase as we got deeper into this pursuit of this, and some of it for me was a little bit driven. I think I was a little bit driven with the idea of, I don't want to have regrets at the end of my life. So there's some psychological things going on as well as me wanting to, follow this dream. And I mentioned in the book this before. This is in 1995 when I met with an elder and asked for direction. He's, was saying start paddling and let God steer. So I was kind of with that mindset of, hey, I'm not just going to sit here and wait. I'm going to start doing something and see where God leads, see how he leads and he led us.
See what doors he opens.
See what the doors, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or doors he closes.
Those are a lot of doors have closed as well. But so as we started to go on this process and it was a we thing. I mean, I felt like my wife initially was reluctantly going along with it because she wanted to support me.
Mm-hmm. Well, by now you guys know that my last year medically was pretty challenging for me. In February, I was diagnosed with a tumor, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, it scared the living daylights out of me. And one of the very first things that I did after calling my husband was reach out to my friends, Dr. Mark and Michelle Sherwood at the Functional Medical Institute. And these guys walked me through from the diagnosis to the surgery to treatment to recovery and did not miss a thing. I praise the Lord for the work these guys are doing. It was their decision to put me on peptides, and those peptide injections And the advice that they gave me, I think, is one of the main reasons why my recovery was such a success. I was back on the road 6 weeks before the doctors anticipated that I would be. And of course, beyond the power of prayer, which you guys know I believe in, I am so thankful for the work of the Functional Medical Institute. So whether you guys are where they are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or you are somewhere else around the country like I am, I want to commend them to you. Reach out right now by going to homeschoolhealth.com to get connected with the work that Dr. Mark and Michelle Sherwood are doing at the Functional Medical Institute. It's a big deal. I mean, I think I told you that when we were talking earlier, that when you have people inside of marriage who have two different, dreams or things that they want to do, I think sometimes for women especially, we can easily squash what God's put into our husbands because, or fear, we're afraid that if he tries this thing, what's going to happen to our family budget? What's going to happen to our, women have this intense need to feel provided for and secure.
Yeah.
And so, and I know that for Jay and I and all the things that we've tried, all the dreams that we've had and all the things that we've done, sometimes they're different. We each had different dreams, but I can remember very intensely one time, kind of this almost midlife crisis that Jay and I found ourselves in when I was doing more book writing and he was unhappy with the work that he was doing. And so he'd come alongside and he was trying to help me, not trying to, he absolutely was helping me. And we were building this new thing, but he felt like he sort of lost himself in the process. And at one point I heard him crying in the backyard and just asking the Lord, what am I supposed to do now? What's my role? And I thought, it's easy for women to unintentionally wound their husband, and that drive that God's put into men to pursue things and be protectors and providers. And I hope that what you're saying is resonating with some women who are listening to this right now, because I know that there's a lot of them who are listening whose husbands have a dream maybe, and maybe the wife is squashing that dream. And it's pretty profound that your wife, though she's cautious and has a different personality than you, would allow you to pursue this thing that God had put in your heart. I imagine it wasn't without risk and it wasn't without struggle, though.
Yeah, I think as we went along, there were steps along the way where, the questions started to, to come up. And each year was kind of one of those things where each spring we were kind of assessing this.
Is it working?
Yeah, is it working? And my feeling, like, I cannot keep going unless she's, going to support me.
She had to be on board.
She had to be on board. And I got that. I understood that. And so there were, kind of negotiating, a lot of negotiating.
The negotiating.
So we did a lot of that. And counseling.
Marriage is just a big giant negotiation, honestly. You're either making a deposit or you're making a withdrawal, right?
Yeah, that's true. And so
true.
There were times, though, that I think my negotiating style was a little bit, I'm an attorney, a little bit more,
a little aggressive.
but I had to learn. I had enough awareness of gauging what was going on with my wife, especially with small kids. And then a third, then we had Sammy. She had in 1999. So we're now still in the midst of just starting, getting prospects and that sort of thing. Number 3 comes along.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was once the kids were just a little bit older, then I would take them with me to on some road trips and that sort of thing. So that helped. But there's a lot of stress, looking back. Because I still look back in my journals and I'm like, wow, how did we get through this period of time?
Yeah, I think everyone who's been married for a pretty decent length of time has to be able to look back and go, how did we get? How do we make it through that? It's a lot of compromise and a lot of taking care of each other. But you in the book you write about learning to navigate the differences between you and your wife's personalities in ways that would strengthen instead of strain your marriage. And I think it sounds to me like what you're saying is a lot of it was just learning to listen, learning to sort of, you have to develop that skill. I was telling you a minute ago that one of the things I have learned to ask Jay, or sometimes I'll just say to him, if I realize the focus has been too heavy on me or too heavy on the family, and I don't want him to lose himself in the things that God's given him and gifted him to do. And so sometimes I'll just say to him, Jay, let's talk about you. let's talk about you. And he always just gets this smile on his face. Like, what are we doing? I'm like, no, let's talk about you.
Very good.
Like what's on your, your heart, and how are you feeling? And how are you, like one time I said, how would you rate our marriage? Like on a scale of 9 to 10. But it kind of opens up the door to say, I'm going to let you rate it, but also be careful with my heart.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, what I was thinking though is with my wife, if her needs are being met, so the times where I felt like she was not, with me was when she was not feeling loved, or she was, she was feeling like I was putting,
it's
my
almost
job
like the Bible
first.
says, husbands love your wives.
Yeah. Well,
they need to feel that love. Like you need to feel the respect, right? Wives respect your husbands, husband love. It's almost like the Bible knows men and women really well.
Well, love and respect.
Yeah.
And that's the Egerit's book. And that's, again, I put that in, throughout my book, I'm referencing other books because we were using those to help us because we were stuck a lot. We'd get stuck and then we'd find ways. And a book would come along, Love and Respect, and that just hit us really well. And so there was some insight there one of the year, maybe it was around 2003, where, we were going through that love and respect and a light bulb went off. With me, just being able to love her and feel like then she, then
what
she
made
would
her feel loved. I mean, how did you figure that out?
Well, I mean, the book really, it's kind of like this crazy because we were on the crazy cycle, and we were, just a lot of stress, and it's just like let's stop stop the cycle,
stop
the cycle, and just kind of, what's going on, and it's just again listening to her and feel her anxieties and her feeling heard, that was really very big in marriages. I don't have that same feeling. Like for me, I don't necessarily have to feel heard. I just need, like you said, the respect is if I'm, pursuing something, I guess I'm hopeful that she'll be supportive, but she's not going to be supportive if I'm not
if she
loving
doesn't
her.
feel loved.
Right.
Yeah.
So that cycle was, you gotta know you're in it. Sometimes you don't even, you have to stop.
You gotta know how she receives love, because you might receive love in a different way than she would.
Well, we know that book too,
right?
The love languages.
The love languages. Boy, Gary Chapman's been on my show. He's a great guest, by the way. Yeah.
So we're very familiar with that, and of course I'm big on. For mine is like affirmation, and hers is of course quality time and time with her. So I.
Dude, mine's acts of service. You want to love Heidi St. John, clean the kitchen.
Okay, very good. Well, I hope your husband knows that.
He does.
Well, that's right, because we want to serve. We want to do the one I want to. I can affirm.
You want to do the one that ministers to you.
Yes, I can affirm my wife, and that doesn't necessarily do it.
Yeah,
so.
don't care.
Don't care. Right. So I can go through. We went through a lot of different marriage books, seminars, conferences to try to get at, because we would find ourselves in these different places where we were stuck, especially because I'm pursuing, again, if I just did my, regular routine and go to work and come home for dinner, everything would be fine, but that's not who I am. And and she understood that, but it still didn't make her feel comfortable.
No, right. It was a challenge for her.
And all those years. Yeah. So she sacrificed a lot for me. Her dream was to stay home with the kids and she had to do some sacrifices more so than me. So that, I mentioned that in the book in the acknowledgement. She sacrificed her dream for me to pursue mine.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It brings you to tears.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I was just getting the feeling we're going to cry. I actually brought some Kleenex over here for you.
Right.
If you need it, it's right there.
It's good. Well, that's going to keep me from crying as long as I have the tissues.
You know what it is, though? I think, see, that'll make me cry too. Watching you cry is going to make me cry. I think that the older we get and the longer we're married, the more those sacrifices are highlighted, because you realize we probably wouldn't have made it from point A to point B if there hadn't been sacrifice along the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we talked about, negotiation and compromise and that sort of thing. But, and I do, support counseling 100%, because we do need to, we need help sometimes.
You need somebody else's perspective sometimes. You need to be able to say, okay, my wife says this and I say this, and what do you say?
Yeah.
And someone who's, that third party who's not emotionally invested, is not going home sleeping with you every night to say, well, here's a little perspective for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like, as I look back on all of that, it was a challenge. But the risk for me is easy. It's, I don't mind taking risks. I don't mind, uncertainty. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we collided a lot.
Because
Yeah.
she wanted to feel that
That's,
certainty.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we both learn, I've learned to be more willing to slow down when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And she's willing to take more risks, I think, as
Yeah.
we've grown.
That's kind of meeting each other sort of in the middle,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, marriage is work. I mean, you want to be married until, and have your marriage last. It's work. It's sacrifice. It's learning how to speak each other's language. It's maybe sitting across from your spouse and saying, let's talk about you. Right. And learning and listening. What's your encouragement to, some couples maybe who are listening to this right now, and there's tension in their marriage? That tension's there.
Yeah. Well, you can't ignore it. You've
All
got
the emojis on your dashboard are on. If they're all lit up, you got to pay attention.
Well, one thing that we were able to do, and once we kind of understood each other, we went through this book, Fight Your Way to a Better Marriage, with Greg Smalley. And
He says don't avoid conflict.
exactly. Well, there's a lot of conflict avoiders. And
Yeah.
I would say I can be a conflict
I mean,
avoider.
you don't want to be all, yes, conflict, but also if you got to talk about something, you got to talk about it.
And it strengthens your marriage, though, to deal with it. And so we do keep short accounts, and we've been much better at that. So we actually taught at our church. We went through the book with I don't know how many couples, like 20 couples, and felt like we had a lot to share because we had had a lot of conflict, but we had dealt with it, and we were better for it. And so a lot of you've got to face it, and there's the other side, though. You'll get through the other side.
Yeah.
If you're committed. That's the thing. As in a Christian marriage, well, in any marriage, you take your vows and you're committed. Divorce that's not even a word that we ever said. And we're committed to, hey, we're stuck together.
We're for better or worse in it here. Yeah.
There was a lot of worse, but we're gonna fight through it. And we did. And we came to a point where our marriage is better. It can always get better. So we're still a work in progress.
Yeah. What if your morning cup of coffee could do more than just wake you up? Introducing coffee from my friends at Equipping the Persecuted. It's a high-end specialty roast coffee that's been crafted with excellence. But here's the difference. 100% of every dollar you spend with Equipping the Persecuted goes directly to saving the lives of persecuted Christians in Nigeria. Over the last 5 years, 90% of Christian persecution deaths worldwide have occurred in Nigeria. That's why every bag of ETP coffee matters. The Bible says whatever you eat or drink, do it all to the glory of God. And with ETP coffee, your daily cup becomes an act of faith, providing food, medical aid, schools, and protection for those suffering simply because they follow Christ. So drink coffee that makes an eternal impact. Order now at etpcoffee.com and share the mission by inviting friends to join you at etpcoffee.com. Boy, I think that's true, right? We're always a work in progress. There's always things that we can do. And I think, and you and I were talking about this before, in every marriage, there are ebbs and flows. There are highs and lows. And I think this is true from the time you're first married to, till when you're entering into your sunset years. But I will say, when people said to me, wait till you're married for, 10 years. I have always loved being married to Jay. I've always loved it.
Yeah.
Even when we've had really, really hard times, and we've had, we've suffered through, miscarriage, we've lost a home to foreclosure, and we've suffered through a lot of things in our marriage. But I haven't always loved, every second of it, but I have loved marriage, and I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like when someone's going to say, that's what I was telling you about, but I think part of that is that mutual sacrifice. It's that surrender. You're surrendering to the Lord. You're willing to say, hey, I'm wrong, or hey, I blew it. Or maybe you didn't think you were wrong, but you just cried uncle, and you just thought, this isn't worth the trouble. Or at least not worth. Sometimes I actually do think there are some things that aren't worth fighting about. But you just have to go, you know what? That's okay. whatever, leave your shoes there and I'll pick them up or whatever it is. But I do think that this idea that marriage isn't going to be a fight just isn't true, because the adversary would love to take out your marriage, take out your legacy.
But keep in mind, again, we're believers. So we're both praying together. And sometimes we pray separately when we're like in things didn't
Sometimes you're
work
praying the Nehemiah prayer, right? Some of those imprecatory psalms are going up.
But we do get convicted.
Yeah.
We get convicted and the Holy Spirit convicts us.
Praise
and
the
so
Lord.
we do need to, we bring things to God, and sometimes we do go our separate ways, and we pray and we come back together, and we're, forgive each other. And it's, that's what it is. Yeah.
Before you talk about surrendering to God, you talked about like this leap, like entering the world of baseball agents. And I think most people listening to that seems like a 1% job right there, Dave. Like most people don't go,
Yeah.
I think I'll be a baseball agent. I think a Dr. Seuss, book comes to mind. Maybe I should fly a jet. Maybe I should be a vet. Maybe I should be a baseball agent.
Right. It does sound like a pipe dream. Right.
It kind of does. So what drew you to it, and what was the risk that was involved as you stepped into this competitive field? Because it's pretty competitive, I would imagine. Small field, competitive.
Yeah, so I maybe I don't know. I got hit on the head or something. I didn't really know how I was able to think that was something that was possible. But I felt that I was going to just try it and see if I could move forward in that area. So I did start to learn the business, and I learned to. Basically, there's a lot of the baseball scouts in each region, and so they're the ones who identify the talent. So we're able to identify the talent, but then to convince a player when we have no players to go with us was, it's the catch-22. How do you get a client when you don't have any clients?
Right.
And that's where we just, I was very thankful to have my first prospect back in 1999 into 2000, and that kept me going. See, if there weren't things that happened. If doors weren't opening, then I can take the hint.
Well, this isn't for me.
You try it out, but I got this. But I was also a little driven, as I indicated, about this regret, this idea of regret, and feeling like there was this push to kind of feel like, wow, I really need to succeed at this,
right?
And that was in the background that I didn't really pick up till later.
So so you're taking a risk, and I'm just at least this is true in my life, and I'm assuming this is also true in your life. That risk really shapes you when you take that risk. I mean, it's this stepping off, like the Indiana Jones, where you're just like, and you're hoping that step's going to show up. How did it shape you? I mean, it's spiritually and emotionally and relationally with your wife.
Yeah, well, whenever you're taking a risk, I have the quote in the book, or I attribute it it's to Hudson Taylor. Without an element of risk, there's no need for God. So you're putting yourself out there. I was in God's word a lot more. I was praying more, and things were happening that I wasn't expecting. Like, for example, I share in the book about this. This was 1999. I was advertising on a Christian radio station, and they invited, those who advertised on this cruise on the Potomac River,
Nice.
Very nice. And all the advertisers, and there was this one couple that were they had a termite business. And so we were just talking for a few minutes, and and I mentioned I was a baseball agent, or I was aspiring to be a baseball agent. Well, lo and behold, their daughter was dating a baseball player,
Ooh.
a minor league baseball player who
Okay.
didn't have an agent, who was actually looking for an agent.
I love it.
So those kind of things. And then he ended up, he was one of my first clients, and 7 years later, he made it to the majors.
Wow.
So that was one of those stories that when I, look back on it, where God was kind of those serendipity kind of moments. I mean, that anytime you're pursuing something, you need something like that.
Yes, you do.
To kind of say, hey, you're on the right track, and those kind of things. So that was one of the things. And then the Washington Post article, which I talk a lot about, that really was a big deal that, happened in 2001. They were going to do this article on me, and 9/11 happened. And so the article got bumped into the next year, but then it became a much bigger article, because then they came down to spring training. The writer followed me around, and then he, there was a cover story in the Washington Post magazine.
Wow.
It was a big deal. Well, actually, I brought, here you go.
Washington Post. Let me see. I want
Here
to
it is.
see.
Well, it's the same picture from the book, but that was, that was me in 2001.
Wow.
So things like that happen. And I'm like, well, I can't stop now. I'm on the cover of the Washington Post magazine.
Also, right there with Larry King's name at the top.
And then
Plus,
they,
Larry King on why he can't shut up. That's amazing. That's an amazing headline. But listen,
and Bill
this
Clinton
is
was in
like,
them.
I
Yeah.
love this. This is called The Agent.
But
What happens when you risk everything to follow your dream?
well, that's what he thought. I didn't think I was risking everything, but that's what
Wow.
we did a little play on that with Worth the Risk, because it's, what
That's
happens
a
when you risk
great
everything.
picture.
And that picture, so let's see. So that picture was taken in 2001. And so I was just saying, hey, God, you're leading me, this then led into Joe Combe, who I share in my book. We became partners.
Okay.
And he saw the article and he called me from Virginia Beach, and he's a Christian. And he was like, just calling to encourage me. And we just started talking. And then eventually, a few years later, we became partners. And I felt like he's like my guardian angel. He was like such an encourager, and he was on the same road I was.
Mm.
And we just came together. And again, that was a God thing, because otherwise, he was my competitor. We were going into some of the same homes.
Mm.
And, but he was, those kind of things were happening. And I just felt like God was leading me, but I wasn't going to be making money anytime
Right.
soon. I made some money in the draft, but you had to have a player in the major
It's
leagues.
pretty rough, though. I think people,
Yeah.
like sometimes people say to me, because I think I have 12 books now that I've written, and people will say, man, that's amazing. What a way to make a living. I'm like, nah, that'd be the way to go broke. Like you don't make money as an author until you're like Michael Crichton, or until Oprah Winfrey goes, look at this book. I'm going to make that the book of the month. You're making like 25 cents a book. And then you got to figure out, most authors, at least people who are, trying to sign contracts with big publishing houses, have an agent. The agent takes, 20% right off the top. And then you got self-employment taxes. And by the time you're done with your book,
Right.
you realize, my husband said to me one time, he goes, Heidi, I figured it out. I just did the math. You made $1.22 an hour writing this book. And I was like, oh, that's right. And then you got to kind of do what you're doing. Then you got to go on the road so that people even know about the book. Otherwise, you wrote the book and nobody ever knows you wrote it. It's just, it really isn't what most people think it is. And it takes a long time. And you have to know that you're doing what God asked you to do. And I think that's that's the settling factor. It's like, well, I said yes. Like it was like me running for Congress. I lost that race. That was a nail biter too. My husband, the morning after, and I was just like, dude, that was brutal, right? Running for a federal seat in the climate that we live in now. And he just looked at me and he said, Heidi, you did win. You won when you obeyed, right? The winning's in the obedience.
Yeah.
And that's what you and your wife just kind of following. That's a risk. Becoming a baseball agent, it's a risk. And you're following the Lord. And you kind of wait to see, is it going to bear fruit? And even if it didn't, you still did what you knew that God was asking you to do.
But it's interesting you say that, because some people would be listening and saying, why would God want you to be a baseball agent? And
I could name you 100 reasons why.
Yeah. Go
Listen,
ahead.
and your girl Heidi doesn't know anything about sports, okay? So everyone listening to this podcast who knows me is laughing right now, because I'm like, baseball, is that where you kick the ball or hit it with a bat? I don't know. Actually, I'm not that dumb about sports, but I don't know sports, and I could tell you that would open up an entire world of witnessing. I would imagine people that you would be rubbing shoulders with that you wouldn't normally rub shoulders with. I would imagine the highs and the lows of a young man trying to get into that profession would give you opportunities that you would have never dreamed about to share the gospel.
Well, that is, you can be my spokesperson, because that's right.
You just give me a call, take 20% right off the top.
But there has been that. And I have, when I did this night with the author at our church, and I invited Aaron Laffey, who was one of my players for many years, and he played in the majors, but he came and he spoke and he shared how much a difference I made in his life.
See, that's special. That's amazing.
And that made it worth it. That's another, it's like, was it worth the risk? Well, financially, it was not a success. I made some money. God gave me some success.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, again, when we take these risks, ultimately they're for His purpose, not ours. And that's where the learning experiences for me and what was the purpose of all this is, God is showing me, now then I wrote a book. I didn't even think, that I'd be out here in Portland talking to Heidi, so you just never know where God's going to lead.
Yeah, you never do. And you You said that there are actually two separate risks in your story, right? You said that the first one was to become a baseball agent and the risk to surrender your entire
Yeah.
life to God.
Yeah.
Why do you call both of them worth it?
Well, the second one's easy because God has a better plan than we could ever have. So that's an easy one when I think about it. Because again, there's a time I used to be afraid to surrender to God, but then I see what God has for us is much better than we can imagine. So that was an easy one. Worth the risk. On the other part, I learned a lot, but financially, it wasn't worth the risk. But otherwise, all the things I learned as a result, I wouldn't have learned these things had I not taken this risk. I wouldn't have learned what life is really about as a Christian. The 2 Timothy 4:7, the fighting the good fight and keeping the faith and finishing the race is really helped me to see what it is going to be for me at the end of my life. So that's that has me in a much different place than I would have been had I pursued it.
I think when you take those risks, like you could say that my risk running for Congress, wasn't worth it because I didn't get elected. But I'll tell you what, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about our marriage. I learned a lot about Republicans. That's all I have to say about that. To me, there are lots of things that make something worth a risk that have nothing to do with money and whether or not financially it pans out the way that you want it to. And I think a lot of believers really struggle with this fear of taking godly risks. And in the book, and I think this was an important point, you discern between a reckless decision and a faith-driven act of obedience. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, again, and I ran for office as well, and I, with no chance of winning, and it was about obedience. I felt that I was being obedient to God because I really felt that God, and even I had journal entries going back in the 90s of me, thinking about politics. And then in 2018, when the flavor of, I'm a Republican and I was in a kind of a Democratic area, and I felt like, God was leading me to just speak about being a reasonable Republican, and so that was obedience. And I remember right before I decided to run, I was praying about it, and I went to this, I think it was a pro-life kind of banquet or something, and the speaker said, I think there's somebody in here who should be running for office.
Oh, whoa.
And I
knew it was you.
I went up to him afterwards and I said, I can't believe you said that. And he goes, I wasn't even thinking of saying that. And I was like, God, okay, I guess I'm going to run for office. That hit, that was just some of those things like that would happen. And I was, okay, you got to, listening to God, that's ultimately, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Well, then if you're, so talk to the person who's listening to this right now, and they're like, they can feel their palms are sweating and their hearts racing because God's asking them, or they feel like God's asking them to take a risk. And they're going, maybe this podcast is the thing that God's using to kind of push me out into that, jumping off place. How do they discern if this is what God's asking them to do, or if it's a reckless decision that they shouldn't be making? Yeah.
So that's where, you're probably in the same boat as trying to, once you have that thought, it's still, you still need to pray about it. You still need to, get
wisdom is found on the counsel of many. So be talking to people whose lives bear fruit that you've seen and who will give you good counsel.
But here's the thing. I think most people, though, that fear hits that wall of fear.
Yep.
And if that's what's holding you back, then it's, then you need to knock that wall down.
Yeah. God didn't give you a spirit of fear, right?
That's
Power,
right.
love, and a sound mind. And fear, I mean, goodness sake, if it was fear, we'd never do anything, right? You wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. You wouldn't drive to work because, what could happen? It could possibly go wrong. Didn't you hear about so-and-so got in an accident on their way to work the other day, right?
And some people do stay home.
And some people do stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that would be a regret, I think, that you allowed your fear to keep you from. And I think this is true going back to what we were talking about, wives the other day, or in a couple of minutes ago, we were talking about this, that, I think we can really, hurt the heart of our husbands when we allow fear. It's a fear of not having enough, fear of not being provided for. And we allow that fear to be the dominant voice when it comes to counseling our husband or listening to a dream that he might have, or even vice versa. Maybe it's a wife that has a dream and she's trying to share it with her husband, and his fear is, well, you're going to be gone too much. Or I like that you're home every night making chicken soup. Maybe that's the fear. And you're right. I mean, that can't be the deciding factor.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to know that because you might react to something, but you're going to have to look a little deeper then to see if if that really is what's going on. But underneath a lot of our reactions are, fear and anxiety and that sort of thing. So,
yeah. I think we have just a few minutes left, but I want to turn this a little bit to parents who are listening to this, because, we want to raise, I hope, risk-taking, obedient kids. And I'm wondering what that looks like in this cultural moment, especially for families, in light of, we see what's happened to Charlie Kirk. There's a lot of fear in the culture. There's a lot of anger in our culture right now. And I think the easy thing for parents, the comfortable thing maybe for parents to do, is to steer our kids away from anything that's risky, because as parents, we don't want them to get hurt. Or we might be afraid on behalf of the child. What do you say to the parent like that?
Well, I mean, we raised 3 boys, and a lot of what they're doing now, they are taking risks, and so I didn't teach it to them. They just saw how we were living. My middle son's in the Navy. He's a EOD. He's a explosive ordnance disposal technician.
That's risky.
A little bit of risk.
That's a little risky.
He's so again, as far as risks, sometimes it's just a personality thing. I mean, we try to instill in our kids, to pursue, their dreams or, that sort of thing. And that I felt like all 3 of them are very different, but they're pursuing things that they enjoy doing. And my oldest son is a teacher in Cleveland, Ohio, and my youngest son's an engineer. And I don't know if I shared this, that they all 3 got married this year.
Amazing.
This year, all 3 of them.
Wow, you went from 3 kids to 6, just like that.
No, but the daughter, I'm very excited about our daughter-in-laws, and I feel really good about, even though there were times in our marriage that, we struggled, but I think our kids got the sense that, we were committed to them, and
to each other.
And to each other in our marriage as well. But the whole idea of taking risks, I would, I encourage it, for our kids.
You don't want to raise kids who are afraid of their own shadow either. Get out there, especially, if your kids are little, it's actually okay for them to fall off their bike and skin their knee. I think sometimes we're so protective, and we don't want our kids to suffer, and we don't want them to fail. And that's always the risk, right? And I would rather my kids ran and tried at something and failed than didn't try and always wondered what would have happened if they maybe would have tried. And I think that's part of what I hear, in you. I think if your wife and you had not been on that same page, and she wouldn't have let you try, I think you always would have looked back and thought, I wonder what would have happened. And then there's the regret that you were talking about at the beginning of our interview today.
Yeah, no, that's right. My wife was very, looking back on that, she did a great thing to let me pursue that. And we landed okay. We landed.
Yeah. We landed the plane.
We did land the plane. And we're on the ground right now.
On the ground.
Before the next flight. But we're doing, we're doing, and we have now a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah.
I know there was one other thought I had about that, but then with the book, she was supportive of the book, and she was helping towards the end with the last chapter. Last chapter is always so hard. When I hear is the hardest part to close it.
I agree, yeah.
And she was really helpful with doing that. She, we were pretty honest and open in the book about our marriage, and she was, supportive of that. So now we have a second thing going on now with the book. So we'll see. See what's next. But I'm excited about the fact that we can share these things, share the story that hopefully will be inspiring to others.
Yeah, I think it's so encouraging. I wrote a book on marriage a long time ago, And I sit in bed at night and I'm working on the manuscript for it. And it's pretty, I mean,
Okay,
it's
very good.
me. So, I mean, I was like, I'm
Very
writing
good.
about things that most people are like, you can say that out loud, you know? And my husband, I'd read the section to him and he would kind of go, is that actually going to be in the book? And I'm like, well, it's not going to be in the book unless it's okay.
Right.
But I
right.
feel like we can't,
Yeah.
books aren't only worth reading if they're actually honest and real and raw. Otherwise it's like, well, why, what's the point of your mediocre, your mediocre writing that you did? I said, this is actually hard stuff and you and I have been through it and I'd like to talk about it. And so he gave me permission to do that. And he has gone to hundreds of events with me where I have read out loud stories from that book and God uses it.
Yes.
That vulnerability, I think God uses.
So this book is out. You have this marriage book?
Yeah, it's
called. Oh, I got to get it.
Yeah, listen, friend, I'll give you one before you leave. It's a pretty. I always tell people it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry.
Oh, yeah,
because I came from a broken home and just kind of it's sort of lessons that I learned and things that I saw, fractures in my own parents' marriage, that I could begin to see the fractures in my marriage if I weren't to pay attention. But I'll give you a copy. Listen, we'll exchange books today.
Okay, very good.
I get your book, you get my book. See what we're doing? We're trading.
I like
Come
it.
on.
A little negotiating.
Yeah, a little negotiation.
I like
I like that. If people are interested in picking up this book, where would they go?
Well, I mean, it is on Amazon. I guess that's where most books are.
That's where Amazon, the world's bookstore.
That's right. But Ark House Press, actually, who with a Christian publisher, they have a web page, and if you land there, there's something you can click on.
Oh, I love that.
That has different places. So if you don't like Amazon, you can go buy it at Barnes & Noble or Target or somewhere else. So
I love that.
It's available. It's on Kindle. I haven't done the audio version yet, but I've been told I have a good voice, so I'm hoping
you do have a good voice. Yeah.
Got to figure out how to do that.
David could hook you up. David Brody.
Okay.
Yeah. Say, David, man, we're knocking on your door next.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, I know there's always something left on the table, but I'll call you later and say, get this in there. I forgot to tell you this, but I did have 4 players that made it to the major leagues.
Did you really?
Yeah. So there were some moments there where, again, you can't, I can't express just how rewarding that was to go to a major league debut of a player and knowing, like with Taylor Buchholz.
You knew that. You're like, I saw that. I saw the potential.
Yeah, but not only that, it was 6 years. Like for Taylor, I represented him for 6 years before he made that debut. So we were on, this path together.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Hamulak was in the minor leagues 10 years before he made it to the majors. I got him after his 3rd year, so I was with him for 7 years before he made it up. Aaron Laffey, 4 years, and Ian Thomas another 4 or 5 years. So you're with them. You're in the the ups and downs along the way.
Trenches.
And to have that, so that goal and be there for the player, it's amazing. But it's also for the family and for the agent, it's a big deal.
Wow.
So that was another reason it was worth the risk.
Wow.
I guess, to have that. You can't and taking my boys to major league games and the experience. So for them to have that experience of going with their dad to a major league game and going afterwards down in the tunnel.
I was going to say, and also then there's the back seat or the back row, back behind the stage passes. And all the
right.
Things, yeah.
Exactly. So we would go down there
VIP
and see
access.
So that they felt, good about that. I think those trips. Sometimes I'd take one-on-one trips with my boys, and when they're 10 or 11 or 12, and those moments, those memories were great. I have a picture of my son Michael in front of 8 different major league stadiums.
Wow.
So when he was in those age range, and then I met up with him in 2021 when he was in San Diego, and he took me to a game.
Oh.
Took me to the Padres game, and so that was just again, just worth it.
That's amazing. Worth the risk. David Pasti, it's just been great to have you here. Thank you for sharing the message that God's put on your heart and for flying all the way here from the swamp. Or they're from D.C.
But now I have to go back.
Now he has to go back. That's all right. I told you I live outside of a swamp. You live outside of a swamp. It's okay. That's right. The light shines bright, right?
That's good. Yes, it does.
It's just been a delight
to
have you.
It's getting better.
Yes, it is. Praise the Lord. We'll keep praying. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, I hope this has been encouraging for you. What a powerful conversation. I knew it would be when both of us are kind of on the verge of tears. I hope this has been encouraging for you. David has reminded me today that the risk is not the enemy, fear is the enemy. And God continually is going to call you to deeper water, to new ideas, and hang in there, because when we're following the Lord, it's an adventure. What an amazing time to be alive. And this has been encouraging for me in my marriage today. I hope it's been a blessing to you. If you've enjoyed this, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. If you've got a question that you'd like to get to me here at the podcast, you guys know how to do it. heidistjohn.com/fan mail Friday. Thank you guys so much for listening. Get off the bench, get onto the battlefield, and I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and